The Galactic Council had exactly one rule that everyone agreed on. Not the trade regulations, not the peace treaties, not even the bit about not using antimatter weapons near populated star systems. No, the one rule that every species, from the methane-breathing Quilksons to the photosynthesizing Tremkari, unanimously supported was this: do not, under any circumstances, go to a Class 12 Deathworld. Class 12. Deathworlds were planets so catastrophically hostile to life that they shouldn't technically have life. Planets where the atmosphere could dissolve your lungs, the wildlife considered you a light snack, and the weather patterns had been known to achieve sentience just to be more vindictive. The galaxy had 47 of them. They were marked with skull symbols on every star chart. Ships were programmed to avoid them by at least 3 light years. Insurance companies wouldn't even discuss them without charging extra. Earth was Deathworld number 3 on the list, right between a planet made entirely of carnivorous crystals and another where the rain was sulfuric acid with a pH of -2. The Council discovered Earth approximately 473 cycles ago. The initial survey drone lasted 6 minutes before being attacked by something the AI could only describe as an improbably aggressive bird with terrible manners. The second drone made it to the surface, took one reading of the oxygen levels in the atmosphere, and immediately filed a hazard report so severe it crashed 3 separate databases. Oxygen! That much oxygen! The stuff was basically rocket fuel. One spark, and boom! The whole planet should have been a fireball. But it got worse. So much worse. The survey team discovered that Earth didn't just have dangerous life. It had dangerous life that was competing with other dangerous life in an endless, brutal cycle of mutual destruction. Creatures that injected neurotoxins, plants that could give you chemical burns, microscopic organisms that invaded your body and convinced your own cells to destroy you from the inside. One researcher, a Quilkson named Floppy7, watched footage of an Earth creature called a honey badger and immediately requested a transfer to another galaxy. "It doesn't die," Flop7 had shrieked during the presentation to the Council. "We shot it with tranquilizers. It ate them. We tried containment protocols. It broke them. This thing weighs maybe 12 kilograms, and it attacked a creature 40 times its size. For fun." The Council coordinator, a being of pure crystallized thought called Genix, had reviewed the data with what could only be described as profound existential dread. And the dominant species? Oh, them. Flop7's bioluminescent patches flickered in distress. The bipedal mammals. They're worse. They throw rocks at things until those things stop moving. They chase their prey for days until it literally dies of exhaustion. They eat plants that evolved chemical weapons specifically to not be eaten. As recreation coordinator, they call them spicy and put them on everything. Genix had paused. Surely they stay in safe areas, protected zones. They climb mountains for entertainment. They invented devices to go underwater, even though they can't breathe underwater. They strap themselves to flimsy pieces of wood and throw themselves off cliffs. One of their most popular leisure activities is something called camping, where they deliberately go into the wilderness and sleep outside with all the things that want to eat them. The motion to classify Earth as a Class 12 Deathworld and they implement immediate quarantine protocols passed with exactly 0 opposing votes. The motion to make it illegal for any galactic citizen to attempt contact passed with equal enthusiasm. They built warning beacons. They established a 3-light-year exclusion zone. They put it in the textbooks as an example of natural selection gone completely insane. The galaxy felt safer knowing those creatures were safely contained on their hellish rock, killing each other in creative ways, far from civilized space. That feeling lasted approximately 300 cycles. Then a human showed up at orbital platform Epsilon 9, asking if anyone had seen his luggage. His name was Trevor, and he had no idea he'd just violated 16 different quarantine protocols, 3 interstellar laws, and the fundamental assumptions of every xenobiologist in the galaxy. "Listen, mate," Trevor said to the security checkpoint operator, a being that looked like a nervous pile of tentacles in a uniform. "I just need to know if anyone turned in a blue duffel bag. Had my good socks in it." The security operator, whose name was approximately K but went by Tick for species that couldn't make that sound, was having what would later be described as a catastrophic mental breakdown held together by training and paperwork. His 17 eyes were focusing and unfocusing in waves of pure panic. You're from... The readouts say, no, 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 no. Is that a no on the socks then? "You're from Earth!" Tick's tentacles flailed with such vigor that he knocked over his own coffee. "How are you alive? The quarantine field should have, the radiation screening should have. What are you?" Trevor looked down at himself, then back at Tick, confused mostly. "Is this not the Centauri station? The lady at the... Security!" Tick's voice hit frequencies that shattered his coffee mug. "Security! Deathworld breach! This is not a drill! Deathworld breach!" 23 armed guards arrived within 40 seconds. They surrounded Trevor with weapons that could theoretically vaporize a small moon. Trevor, for his part, put his hands up in what he hoped was a universal gesture of, "Please don't shoot the lost tourist." "I just want my socks," he yelled, which probably didn't help. The incident sparked what would later be called the Trevor crisis. Emergency council sessions were convened. Scientists were pulled from their research. Quarantine specialists were brought in from 6 different sectors. The question wasn't just how Trevor had gotten past their defenses. The question was why he wasn't dead. Epsilon 9 was a trading hub for species from 12 different homeworlds, each with their own atmospheric requirements. The public areas were maintained at what was considered dangerously high oxygen levels by most species standards, approximately 14%. Earth's atmosphere was 21% oxygen. Trevor should have been suffering from oxygen deprivation. He should have been gasping, turning blue, collapsing. Instead, he'd complained that the air felt a bit stuffy and asked if anyone had a window he could open. The station's gravity was maintained at 0.7 standard, considered comfortable for most species. Earth's gravity was 0.97 standard. Trevor should have been bounding around like he was on a moon, unable to walk properly, bones too strong for the environment. Instead, he'd mentioned feeling a bit light, and demonstrated by doing what he called a little hop that nearly gave 3 security guards heart attacks when he jumped a meter straight up without even trying. The medical scan revealed something even more terrifying. Trevor's body contained approximately 37 trillion microscopic organisms inside him, living in his body. The medical officer, a normally calm Tremkari named Dr. Vilish, had stared at the readout for a full minute before speaking. He's infected with billions of foreign organisms. How is he not dead?" "Oh, you mean my gut bacteria?" Trevor had asked cheerfully. "Yeah, need those for digestion. Handy little buggers. You're cultivating alien life inside your digestive tract? Well, they're not alien to me." Dr. Vilish had to sit down. Several of his photosynthetic fronds went pale. This is beyond anything. Does your species understand the concept of sterility?" "Sure, we've got soap and everything." The council called an emergency session while Trevor was held in what they hoped was a secure quarantine chamber. He'd been given a tablet with entertainment options and a meal that had been very carefully selected to not kill him. The meal consisted of bland nutritional paste that was molecularly neutral, safe, boring, guaranteed not to cause any biological reactions. Trevor had taken one bite and made a face. "Got any hot sauce?" The request caused another minor panic. Hot sauce meant capsaicin. Capsaicin was a poison, a plant defense mechanism. Why would he want poison on his food? But that was a minor concern compared to the main issue being debated in the council chambers. Genix stood at the center podium, their crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns. The question before us is simple. How did this human breach our quarantine? He claims he took a shuttle, reported Councillor Dwerm, a slug-like being with exceptional bureaucratic skills. A commercial shuttle. From Sol System Station to Proxima Transfer Point, then another shuttle here. He bought tickets, with money. The chamber erupted in confused noise. Finally, a councillor from the back spoke up. But the quarantine fields, the exclusion zone, the warning beacons. The human says he didn't see any warning beacons, Dwerm continued, looking at his notes with 6 of his eyes, while the other 4 watched for hostile reactions. He assumed they were, these are his words, old satellites or whatever. Whatever! Genix's crystalline structure practically vibrated with frustration. We put 40,000 credits worth of holographic warning projections on those beacons. They transmit in 87 languages. They show images of death, skulls, universal symbols of danger. The human says skulls are kinda metal, and he thought they were advertising. Advertising for what? He wasn't sure, possibly a theme park. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens when an entire governing body collectively realizes that the universe makes even less sense than they thought. What, Genix said very slowly, do we do with him? That turned out to be an excellent question. They couldn't exactly keep him. That would require holding a Deathworld species indefinitely, and the station's insurance specifically excluded coverage for acts of planetary impossibility. They couldn't send him back because that would require admitting they'd failed to maintain quarantine in the first place. And they couldn't just let him go because that would set a precedent. While the council debated, Trevor was getting bored. The entertainment tablet they'd given him had crashed after he tried to download something he called Season 4 of the good stuff. The nutritional paste was terrible. The quarantine chamber was, in his words, smaller than my flat, and my flat is depressing. So Trevor did what any bored human would do. He started exploring. The chamber's door was locked, obviously. It had 17 different security protocols, biometric scanners, and a force field that could stop a charging Torgalian battle beast. Trevor examined it for approximately 3 minutes, found a maintenance panel that wasn't quite flush with the wall, pried it open with his fingernail, and crossed 2 wires he thought probably went together. The door opened. Trevor walked out. He made it to the station's main concourse before anyone noticed. The first person to spot him was a Quilkson merchant named Bleep 3, who immediately dropped all 6 armfuls of merchandise and screamed, "It's loose! The Deathworlder is loose!" What followed was pandemonium. Station personnel activated emergency protocols. Bulkheads started closing. Automated announcements warned everyone to evacuate to safe zones. Trevor, meanwhile, had spotted a food court and was examining the menu options with great interest. "Do you have anything like a kebab?" he asked the vendor, a gelatinous being who was currently trying to squeeze through a drain pipe. "Or chips? I'm starving." That paste stuff was awful. The station's chief of security, a heavily armored Krell named Thuds, arrived with every available guard. They found Trevor ordering something called fried Zentari pods from an automated kiosk because the vendor had abandoned their post. He was humming a little tune. He looked, by all accounts, perfectly comfortable. "Freeze!" Thuds bellowed, raising a weapon that could put a hole through reinforced blast doors. Trevor looked up, pod halfway to his mouth. "Oh, hello. Listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just trying to get to Proxima 7 for a wedding. My cousin's getting married. Well, 3rd cousin. Possibly 4th? We're not super close, but she invited the whole family, and Mum said I should go because you escaped containment. The door opened. I figured someone was letting me out. The food was terrible in there. You're a Class 12 Deathworlder. You could be dangerous." Trevor blinked. "Dangerous? Mate, I sell insurance. The most dangerous thing about me is my PowerPoint presentations." He paused. They're pretty boring. People have dozed off. Thuds didn't lower his weapon. You breached 17 security protocols. Did I? Trevor looked genuinely concerned. That wasn't intentional. I just wanted to see if anyone had better food. These pod things are pretty good, actually. Want one? He offered the container toward Thuds. Every guard tensed. Weapons charged up. This was it. The Deathworlder was attacking with biological contaminants disguised as food. Thuds stared at the offered pods. His tactical training said to shoot first. His common sense said this was clearly a threat. His stomach, which hadn't had lunch, said those pods smelled amazing. What are those? He asked, weapons still raised but wavering slightly. Dunno. The machine said they're popular local fare, lightly seasoned. Bit crispy. Quite nice. Trevor popped another in his mouth and crunched contentedly. That's when something unprecedented happened. A junior guard, a young Tremkari named Sprout, who'd always been curious about other species, lowered her weapon. Are they actually good? Trevor swallowed. Yeah, want to try? Sprout, no! Thud snapped, but Sprout had already stepped forward and taken a pod. The other guards watched in horror as she bit into it. Her photosynthetic fronds rippled, her eyes widened. Oh, this is good. Why don't we ever get these in the commissary? Sprout, that's a Deathworlder. He could be poisoning you. If he wanted to poison me, why would he eat it first? Sprout pointed out, reaching for another pod. That would just poison him. Trevor nodded. Exactly. That would be daft. Thuds found himself in an impossible situation. His training said to maintain security protocols. His eyes said the Deathworlder was sharing snacks with his subordinate. His brain said nothing made sense anymore, and maybe he should just retire early. The council, meanwhile, had been informed of the breach and were attempting to coordinate a response, while also dealing with the fact that half of them were arguing about whether to evacuate the entire station. Genix had reached a state of crystalline agitation that was producing a high-pitched whine, audible to most species. He just walked out, Genix said, their form shifting through colors that indicated extreme distress. Through 17 security measures. How? Preliminary reports suggest he, and I quote, jiggled some wires, Dworm reported, consulting his datapad with an expression of profound confusion. Jiggled? Those are the words the security technicians used. They're very confused. Apparently, the probability of randomly crossing the correct wires to disable the containment field was approximately 1 in 4 million. So he's a genius? A savant? Some kind of Deathworld superintelligence? No, Coordinator. According to his background check, he's below average intelligence for his species. The whine from Genix increased in pitch until it shattered a decorative vase. Another counselor, an elderly Zentari named Whispers of Dawn, raised a tendril. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The human clearly doesn't understand the danger he poses. Perhaps we should simply explain it to him. Educate him about the quarantine protocols. You want to talk to the Deathworlder? We talk to dangerous species all the time. The Krell are classified as aggressive warriors, and we trade with them daily. The Quilksons are toxic to most oxygen breathers, and we share council chambers. Why should humans be different? Because they're from a Class 12 Deathworld. Yes, but has this human actually done anything threatening? The council consulted the reports. Trevor had escaped containment. Yes. He'd wandered the station. Yes. He'd shared food with a guard. He'd apologized to a maintenance drone for being in its way. He'd helped a Quilkson merchant pick up dropped merchandise while said merchant screamed at him to stay away. He's being polite, Dworm said, as if the word itself was suspicious. Deathworlders don't do polite. Apparently this one does. The council, for the first time in its recorded history, decided to do something that hadn't been in any of their training manuals, guidebooks, or ancient wisdom texts. They decided to actually ask the Deathworlder what he wanted. Genix personally went to the food court, accompanied by 50 guards, 3 medical teams, and 2 crisis negotiators. They found Trevor trying to explain the concept of football to Sprout, who was listening with genuine fascination while eating more Zentari pods. And then they kick it into the goal. See, it's brilliant when your team wins, devastating when they lose. I'm a United fan, which means I'm mostly devastated, but you keep hoping, don't you? Fascinating, Sprout said. And people pay to watch this? Oh yeah, stadiums full of people. It's quite the experience. You'd love it. Genix cleared their crystalline throat with a sound like wind chimes being dropped downstairs. Human Trevor. Trevor looked up. Oh, hello? Are you in charge? Listen, I'm really sorry about the door thing. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just needed some proper food, you know. We need to discuss your situation. Right, yes. About that. I've checked the shuttle schedules, and there's one leaving for Proxima 7 in 6 hours. If someone could point me to the ticket kiosk, I'll be out of your hair. Metaphorically speaking, do you have hair? Sorry, that might be rude. Not sure of the etiquette. The 50 guards tensed. Genix's form flickered through several colors that indicated confusion, surprise, and the crystalline equivalent of a headache. You want to leave? Well, yeah. Got that wedding to get to. Already running late. My cousin's going to be annoyed. She's very particular about RSVPs. You understand that your presence here is illegal. You've violated multiple quarantine protocols. Have I? Nobody told me. Trevor looked genuinely distressed. Look, if I've broken laws, I apologize. It wasn't intentional. I just took the normal shuttles, bought tickets and everything. I can show you the receipts if that helps. He pulled out a data chip. Dwerm, who'd arrived with Genix, carefully took it and plugged it into a scanner. Sure enough, there were the tickets. Properly purchased, through legitimate vendors, with the correct customs forms filled out, everything was in order. How did you buy these? Dwerm asked slowly. Online? Is there another way? But the vendors should have flagged you as a Deathworlder. Should they? I just clicked the thing that said human. Was that wrong? They pulled up the vendor's website. Sure enough, there it was. A drop-down menu of species options. And there, between Higlarian and Ichthyoid, was the option for human. Someone had added humans to the approved species list. Who did this? Genix's color shifted to something that suggested volcanic fury. An investigation was launched immediately. It turned out that approximately 140 cycles ago, a low-level data entry clerk had been updating species registries. They'd been given a list of newly contacted species to add to the galactic database. Someone had included humans on that list. The clerk, who admitted they'd been very tired and perhaps slightly intoxicated, had just added them to everything, including the approved travel species list, and nobody had noticed, for 140 cycles. The clerk, when tracked down, was now working at a completely different job on a different planet and had zero memory of the incident. I added hundreds of species to the database that cycle, they protested. How was I supposed to know one of them was from a Deathworld? The list didn't say. It just said humans, bipedal mammalian, recently achieved FTL. Nothing about them being insane. So, Trevor said after this was explained to him, I'm actually here legally? Technically, yes, Dwerm admitted, looking like he was chewing on something bitter. You have valid travel documents. You passed through the proper channels. You're in violation of the spirit of about 600 laws, but not the letter of any of them. Oh, good. Trevor brightened considerably. So can I catch my shuttle? Genix made a sound like a crystal singing bowl being used as a gong. The issue, human Trevor, is that you're from a Class 12 Deathworld. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't have survived the journey here. You shouldn't be able to breathe our air or tolerate our gravity or... Is the air bad? I can open a window. No, no windows! The air is fine for us. It should be deadly for you. Trevor looked confused. But it's not? No, and that's the problem. There was a long pause. Trevor scratched his head. So, you're upset that I'm not dying? When put like that, it did sound rather unreasonable. Genix's crystalline structure actually slumped slightly, which their species only did in moments of profound defeat. We need to figure out what to do with you. I vote for let me catch my shuttle, Trevor offered hopefully. That's when Dworm had an idea. A terrible, horrible idea that would either solve everything or make everything exponentially worse. Coordinator, what if we just let him go? What? Think about it. He has legal documentation. He hasn't actually threatened anyone. He's been here for 6 hours, and the only damage is to our assumptions. If we detain him, we're violating his rights as a documented traveler. If we try to deport him, we're admitting our system failed. But if we just let him continue his journey, then officially, nothing happened. Genix stared at Dworm, then at Trevor, then back at Dworm. You want to pretend that a human traveling freely through council space is normal? I want to pretend this never happened and retire without having to fill out the paperwork. It was, without question, the most cowardly and bureaucratically expedient solution possible. It was also, everyone realized, the only solution that didn't require them to rewrite several centuries of regulations, explain to their superiors how this happened, or figure out how to safely contain a being that could apparently escape any containment they had. Fine. Genix's color shifted to something that suggested complete exhaustion. Fine. Human Trevor, you may continue to your destination. But please, for the sake of my sanity and the blood pressure of everyone on this station, try not to touch anything else. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Trevor beamed. You've all been very helpful. Well, mostly. The first bit was a bit rough, but we sorted it out. Oh, before I go, Sprout, would you like my contact info? I could send you some footage of actual football matches if you want. Sprout looked at her commanding officer. Thuds looked at Genix. Genix made a sound like giving up. Sure, why not? Nothing matters anymore. Trevor and Sprout exchanged contact information. He waved goodbye to everyone, thanked Thuds for not shooting him, and headed off to find his gate. The council members and security personnel stood in silence, watching him go. Did that really just happen? Whispers of Dawn asked quietly. I think so, Dworm replied. Are we going to report this? Everyone looked at each other. Then in silent, unanimous agreement, they all shook their heads or equivalent gestures. Report what? Genix said. Nothing happened. No humans were here. This was all a drill. A very stressful, very realistic drill. Agreed, said everyone else. Trevor made it to Proxima 7 without incident. He attended the wedding. He danced awkwardly at the reception. He flew home 3 days later. And if he noticed that the station security seemed very nervous when he passed through on his return journey, he didn't mention it. But here's the thing about bureaucratic cover-ups. They only work if nobody else finds out. And Trevor, being a friendly sort of person, had mentioned his trip to his friends, who mentioned it to their friends, who posted about it on Earth's newly established galactic social network presence. Within a month, 47 other humans had booked trips to various council space destinations, all using the same perfectly legal loophole Trevor had accidentally discovered. The council found out when a human named Priya arrived at the Centauri Medical Research Station asking for directions to the botanical gardens. Then another human named Jorge showed up at a mining colony looking for work. Then 2 humans named Wei and Amara appeared at a diplomatic conference, claiming they were just curious about alien politics. Every single one of them had proper documentation. Every single one of them had legally purchased tickets. Every single one of them had no idea they were from a quarantined Deathworld because nobody had told them. The emergency council session was intense. 47 humans! Genix's crystalline form was practically vibrating itself apart. 47 in less than 30 cycles, and according to our projections, there could be hundreds more coming. We could revoke the species' approval, suggested one councillor. On what grounds? That we made a mistake? That would require admitting the mistake, which would require investigations. which would reveal that we've already let humans through and tried to cover it up. We could tell the humans about the quarantine and admit we tried to keep them trapped on their planet. The diplomatic implications would be catastrophic. Besides, according to reports, humans are remarkably stubborn about being told they can't do something. There's a phrase in their dominant language, "hold my beer," which apparently means they're about to do the thing you just told them was impossible. Dworm raised a tendril. "Coordinator, perhaps we need to ask a different question. Not how do we stop them, but what harm are they actually causing? They're Deathworlders." "Yes, but what have they actually done?" They pulled up the incident reports. Priya had visited the botanical gardens, admired the flowers, and helped a researcher move some heavy equipment that had required a mechanical lifter. She'd just picked it up. The researcher had been so grateful they'd offered her a job. Jorge had started working at the mining colony and was apparently the only being who could safely enter the deep shafts where the toxic gas accumulated, because it smells bad, but isn't that bad. Yahweh and Amara had attended the diplomatic conference, asked intelligent questions, and Amara had apparently impressed everyone by eating the ceremonial feast that most species could only nibble at because the spices were too strong. She'd asked for seconds. "They're helping?" Dworm said, scrolling through the reports with growing disbelief. "And integrating, and... Oh, this is interesting." "What?" "The mining colony where Jorge is working just reported a 37% increase in productivity. Apparently, he's been teaching the other miners something called efficiency techniques and fixing equipment that was considered beyond repair. They're calling him the weird, magical alien who makes broken things work." Another counselor pulled up different data. The medical research station, where Priya is volunteering, has made breakthrough progress on their heavy gravity adaptations research. Apparently having a species that lives in high gravity has been helpful. "And the diplomatic conference," a third counselor added slowly, "just voted to extend an invitation to Earth to apply for associate membership in the council." The vote was nearly unanimous. Genix made a sound like a singing bowl being thrown at a wall. "We quarantined them to protect the galaxy, and now you're telling me they're improving things?" "The data suggests yes." "That's impossible. They're from a death world. They should be dangerous, violent, a threat to civilized space. Should we pull up the reports on the Krell, or the Zentari, or the 16 other species we initially classified as too dangerous, who are now valued council members?" That shut everyone up, because it was true. The Krell had been classified as irredeemably violent until someone realized they were just very enthusiastic and valued honor above all else. The Zentari had been considered toxic and dangerous until better environmental suits were developed. The galaxy was full of species that had once been considered impossible to integrate, but this was different. This was a death world species. Accepting them would mean admitting that maybe, just possibly, the Council's fundamental understanding of what made a planet suitable for life was incomplete. "We need more data," Genix finally said. "Before we make any decisions, we need to understand these humans better. We need someone to study them, monitor them, report on whether they're actually a threat or just extremely confusing." "I volunteer," said a voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. It was Councillor Nexler 14, a mid-level bureaucrat from the Department of Xenocultural Integration. She was a Vrel, a species known for being methodical, patient, and extremely difficult to surprise. She looked like a large fuzzy moth with far too many eyes and an expression of permanent mild interest. "You want to study the Deathworlders?" Genix asked. "Someone needs to, and I'm already behind on my exciting life goals. This seems adequately interesting." Nexler 14 wasn't being modest. She'd spent the last 200 cycles processing integration paperwork for species that had already been integrated. It was mind-numbingly boring. The chance to actually do something new? To study a species nobody understood? That was practically thrilling by her standards. Very well, Councillor Nexler 14, you are hereby appointed as Special Envoy for Human Council Relations. Your mission is to observe human behavior, assess the risk they pose, and report back with recommendations. Understood, Coordinator. Where should I start? Start with the Trevor human. He was the first. If anyone can explain how humans think, it might be him. Nexler 14 found Trevor back on Earth, at his flat in a city called Manchester, watching something called football on a screen while eating crisps. When she materialized in his living room using the Council's diplomatic transport system, Trevor barely reacted beyond glancing over. "Hello," he said, through a mouthful of crisps. "You're one of the crystal aliens from the station, yeah? Want some crisps?" Nexler 14's eyes adjusted to take in the environment. Small dwelling, cluttered but not dirty, images on the walls of other humans smiling, a plant in the corner that looked half dead. This was a normal human habitat. "I am Councillor Nexler 14. I've been assigned to study your species." "Brilliant. Cup of tea?" "I suppose." Trevor got up and shuffled to his kitchen, which was even smaller than the main room. Nexler 14 followed, fascinated. Everything here was so fragile, thin walls, breakable containers, furniture that would collapse under any real weight. And yet humans lived here, on a death world? "So what do you want to know?" Trevor asked, filling a kettle with water from a tap. "Fair warning, I'm not exactly a scientist or anything. I sell insurance, mostly to people who don't want to buy it but have to for legal reasons. I want to understand how humans survived on Earth. The planet is classified as one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy." Trevor blinked. "Is it? Seems all right to me. Your atmosphere is 21% oxygen. That's nearly rocket fuel. Is that a lot? Your gravity is 0.97 standard. Most species would be crushed. Well, we did evolve here, didn't we? Probably just used to it. Your planet has weather systems that can demolish structures, geological activity that reshapes the surface, radiation from your sun that can cause cellular damage, and the wildlife. Oh, you've heard about the wildlife?" Trevor grinned. "Yeah, some of it's pretty rough. Had a spider in here last week. Big one. Probably harmless, but I'm not taking chances. Trapped it under a glass and put it outside." "You removed it non-lethally?" "Well, yeah. Not its fault it came inside, is it? Just looking for somewhere warm, probably." The kettle whistled. Trevor made 2 cups of tea, handed one to Nexler 14, and sat back down in front of the screen. "United's playing City in 20 minutes. Big match. You should watch. Might help you understand humans." Nexler 14 held the cup of hot liquid carefully. It was surprisingly pleasant, whatever it was. She settled down to observe. This was research. Important research. She watched as Trevor shouted at the screen, celebrating when his team scored, groaning when they didn't, referring to the players by first names like he knew them personally. "Why do you care about this?" she asked. "It's just a game." "Just a game?" Trevor looked personally offended. "Football is life. Well, not literally. That would be weird, but it's important. It's about community, isn't it? Everyone coming together to support something. Doesn't matter who you are outside the stadium. You're all there for the same reason. But you're watching alone." "True. But I'm part of something bigger. Thousands of people watching the same match, all feeling the same things. It connects us." Nexler 14 made notes. Humans valued connection. Despite living on a planet trying to kill them, they'd developed complex social structures based on shared experiences. Fascinating. Over the next several cycles, Nexler 14 visited dozens of humans. She went to Earth, to Proxima 7, to Centauri Station. She observed them in their natural habitats and in council space. She took extensive notes, and slowly, a picture began to form. Humans weren't stronger than other species. Well, they were stronger than most, but that wasn't the point. They weren't smarter, though they were creative in unexpected ways. They weren't more advanced, though their technology was developing rapidly now that they had access to galactic knowledge. What made humans different was that they didn't realize they were supposed to be afraid. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved on worlds that were, by galactic standards, reasonable, safe-ish, predictable. When they encountered danger, their instinct was to avoid it, to build protections, to stay away from the things that could hurt them. Humans had evolved on a planet where everything was dangerous. Where the weather could kill you, the animals could kill you, the plants could kill you, and even invisible organisms could kill you. They'd survived not by avoiding danger, but by confronting it, by looking at a problem and saying, well, that's trying to kill me, so I'd better figure out how to kill IT first. But they'd also developed something else, because when everything is dangerous, you can't survive alone. You need your tribe, your community, your team. So humans had evolved to be simultaneously aggressive and cooperative. They'd fight the world, but they'd do it together. Nexla 14 watched a human named Kendra help a stranded Quilkson merchant fix his transport, even though they couldn't communicate verbally. She observed a human called Dimitri share his rations with a Tremkari who'd forgotten to bring food compatible with their biology. She documented 17 cases of humans going out of their way to assist other species, often at personal inconvenience. "Why do you help?" she asked Dimitri. "That Tremkari was not your responsibility." Dimitri had shrugged. "Would have been a dick move to just watch them starve, wouldn't it? But you gain nothing from helping." "I gain the knowledge that I'm not a dick." Human morality, Nexla 14 noted, seemed to be based partly on not being a dick, which was apparently a very important consideration. But it wasn't all positive. Humans were also frustratingly stubborn. When told something was impossible, they took it as a challenge. When warned about danger, they investigated further. When given rules, they looked for loopholes. Not out of malice, but out of what they called curiosity. "But curiosity could get you killed." Nexla 14 protested to a human named Sarah who tried to pet a Zentari waste disposal creature that could have dissolved her hand. "Could have," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "But it didn't. And now I know they like having their backplates scratched. Look, he's purring. Didn't know they could do that." The creature was indeed making a pleased rumbling sound. The Zentari waste management supervisor was having what appeared to be a breakdown. Nexla 14 compiled her report over the next 50 cycles. It was 147 pages long. The conclusion was simple. Humans were not a threat to the galaxy. They were a threat to the Council's understanding of the galaxy. She presented her findings to Genix and the full Council. They listened in increasingly uncomfortable silence. "So what you're saying," Genix said slowly, "is that everything we thought we knew about Deathworld species is wrong." "Not wrong, Coordinator. Incomplete. We assumed that hostile environments produce hostile species, but Earth produced a species that is simultaneously capable of extreme violence and extreme cooperation. They're dangerous, yes, but mostly to things that threaten them or their chosen community. To everything else, they're remarkably, friendly." "Friendly?" "I observed a human spend 6 hours helping a Krell warrior assemble furniture." "Furniture, Coordinator. They bonded over the experience. The Krell now refers to the human as battle brother." "That's impossible. Krell don't form bonds with non-Krell." "They do now." The council chamber was silent. Finally, Whispers of Dawn spoke. "What do you recommend, Councillor Nexla 14? "I recommend we accept reality. Humans are here. They're going to keep coming. Our options are to either integrate them properly or spend the next 1,000 cycles fighting a bureaucratic battle we've already lost. And based on my observations, integrating them will actually benefit the Council." "Benefit?" "They're innovative. They're resilient. They work well with other species once they understand the cultural rules. And perhaps most importantly, they're volunteering to leave their death world and help build a better galaxy. That's not something to fear. That's something to utilize." Another counselor raised a tentacle. But what about the other Deathworld species? If we accept humans, we'll have to reconsider our classifications for all of them. Perhaps we should, Nexler 14 said calmly. Perhaps our entire system of classification is flawed. Perhaps we've been so focused on avoiding danger that we've missed opportunities. It was heresy. It went against centuries of established policy. It would require admitting that the Council had been wrong about something fundamental. And yet, as the councillors looked at Nexler 14's data, at the incident reports, at the testimonials from species who'd worked with humans, they couldn't argue with the results. Humans were beneficial. Annoying, yes. Confusing, absolutely. But beneficial. Very well, Jennings said, their crystalline form settling into a colour that suggested resigned acceptance. We'll put it to a vote. All in favour of officially recognising humans as an approved species for Council space travel. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it passed, by a significant margin, and just like that, humans went from quarantined Deathworlders to officially recognised galactic citizens. The announcement caused immediate chaos on Earth. Governments scrambled to establish proper diplomatic relations. Corporations started developing space travel programs. Universities launched xenocultural studies departments. And millions of ordinary humans, who'd been vaguely aware that aliens existed, suddenly realized they could actually go meet them. The tourism industry exploded. Within a year, humans were showing up at every major Council space station, often with guidebooks and cameras, and an alarming enthusiasm for trying local foods. The Council watched with growing resignation as humans integrated themselves into galactic society through sheer persistence and friendliness. They opened restaurants serving Earth cuisine. They started trading companies. They volunteered for dangerous jobs that other species avoided. They thrived in environments that should have killed them and made friends with species that should have found them incompatible. Nexler 14 found herself promoted to Ambassador for Human Relations, a position that hadn't existed a year ago and now required a staff of 50 just to handle the inquiries. She set up her office on a station halfway between Earth and the Council's central governance world and tried to manage the increasing flow of human-related incidents. Most of them were minor, humans trying to ride animals that weren't meant to be ridden, humans eating things that weren't technically food, humans attempting to improve technology that had worked fine for centuries. But occasionally, something more significant happened. Like the time a human mechanic named Paolo figured out how to increase fuel efficiency on Quilkson transport ships by 17% using just some basic physics and common sense. The Quilksons had been using the same engine design for 300 years. Paolo had looked at it for 2 hours and spotted an obvious inefficiency. When asked how he'd learned such advanced engineering, Paolo had shrugged and said he'd watched some YouTube videos. Nobody knew what YouTube was. The Quilksons didn't care. They implemented Paolo's changes across their entire fleet and gave him a medal. Or the time a human doctor named Aisha realized that human medical techniques could be adapted to help Tremkari, who'd been injured in ways their own medicine couldn't handle. She'd started a joint medical research program that revolutionized trauma care for 6 different species. When asked why she'd dedicated her life to helping aliens, Aisha had said simply, "Because they needed help, and I could provide it. Why wouldn't I?" The concept of helping others without expectation of personal gain was still strange to many Council species. But they were learning. Of course, not everything was smooth. There were tensions. Some species resented humans for disrupting established hierarchies. Others were genuinely afraid, remembering the Deathworld classifications. And there were humans who caused problems, either through ignorance or genuine malice. But those cases were, statistically, outliers. The real story was the thousands of small successes, the friendships formed, the problems solved, the barriers broken down. Humans had a gift for finding common ground with almost anyone, probably because they'd spent their entire evolutionary history learning to cooperate with each other despite substantial differences. "I think I understand now," Jenix said to Nexler 14, approximately 3 years after Trevor had first walked into Epsilon 9 looking for his luggage. They were watching a cultural exchange program where human children and Zentari juveniles were learning about each other's worlds. Humans aren't Deathworlders, not really. They're survivors. And they don't just survive, they thrive. And then they help others thrive too. A poetic way to put it, Coordinator. I'm trying to find the positive in this situation. Are you succeeding? Surprisingly, yes. Though I still have nightmares about that Trevor human eating Zentari pods and enjoying them. Nexler 14 laughed, a sound like wind through leaves. I've learned something from studying humans. They have a phrase, adapt or die. They chose adaptation. Perhaps we should too. You're suggesting the Council become more like humans. I'm suggesting we become more flexible, more open to possibilities, more willing to reconsider our assumptions. Humans didn't ask permission to integrate into galactic society. They just did it. And honestly, the galaxy is better for it. Jenix couldn't argue with that. The economic reports showed growth. The cultural exchange programs were wildly successful. Even species that had initially protested human integration were now admitting that maybe, possibly, it wasn't the catastrophe they'd predicted. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Trevor was watching the news coverage of humanity's integration into galactic society. He was eating crisps and drinking tea, same as always. When the reporter mentioned him by name as the first human to accidentally break the galactic quarantine, he nearly choked. "Oh, bloody hell," he muttered. "I'm famous." His phone rang. It was a journalist requesting an interview. Trevor declined politely. Then another called, and another. By the end of the day, he'd received 47 interview requests, 3 book deals, and an offer to appear on a talk show. Trevor ignored them all. He wasn't interested in fame. He'd just wanted to go to a wedding and eat some decent food. The fact that he'd accidentally triggered a galactic diplomatic crisis and forced the Council to reconsider centuries of policy, that was just unfortunate timing. But he did accept one invitation. Sprout, the young Tremkari guard from Epsilon 9, invited him to visit her homeworld for a cultural festival. She'd been practicing human football and wanted to show him her skills. Trevor agreed immediately. The trip was uneventful. The festival was lovely. Sprout's football technique needed work, but she was enthusiastic. They ate local foods, which Trevor found quite nice, actually, and discussed philosophy, sports, and the general weirdness of the universe. When Trevor left, Sprout gave him a traditional Tremkari farewell gesture and told him he was always welcome. On his way back to Earth, Trevor ran into Nexler 14 at the transfer station. She was reviewing reports and looking exhausted. He bought her a tea and sat down across from her. "Rough day?" he asked. "Rough year. Do you have any idea how much paperwork is involved in integrating an entire species into galactic society?" "Sounds dreadful. Have you tried just not doing some of it? That's not how bureaucracy works." "Shame." They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Then Nexler 14 looked at him. "Do you ever regret it? Breaking the quarantine? You changed the entire galaxy." "Did I, though? Seems like I just bought a ticket and showed up. Everything else just sort of happened around me." "That's a very human perspective." "Is it? Seems like common sense to me. I can't control what other people do with information. I just did what I wanted to do. Go to a wedding, try some new foods, see what's out there. Not my fault the universe was waiting for someone to poke it." Nexler 14 considered this. It was very human. The idea that you could just do something without considering all the implications and then adapt to whatever consequences arose. Most species would have spent years planning, analyzing, preparing. Humans just went. "Do you think more humans will come?" she asked. "Oh, definitely. We're curious that way, can't help ourselves. Tell us there's something interesting out there and we'll find a way to get to it. Tell us it's dangerous and we'll want to see it even more. That's terrifying. Is it? Seems adventurous to me. The shuttle arrived. Trevor stood, collected his bag, and headed toward the gate. Then he paused and looked back. For what it's worth, I think you're doing a good job. The whole integration thing can't be easy, but it seems to be working out. High praise from the human who started it all. Just being honest. Anyway, take care of yourself. Don't work too hard. Life's short enough without spending it all on paperwork. He waved and left. Nexla 14 watched him go. This utterly ordinary human who'd accidentally revolutionized galactic society just by being himself. And she realized that maybe that was the point. Humans didn't need to be extraordinary. They just needed to be themselves, and that was extraordinary enough. The Council eventually updated their Deathworld classifications. Earth remained a Class 12 Deathworld. That part was accurate, but they added a note. Native species cleared for general galactic interaction. Approach with caution, snacks, and patience. The ban on Deathworld immigration remained in place for every planet except Earth. Because honestly, what was the point? Humans were going to show up anyway. They'd find loopholes, make friends, integrate themselves through sheer stubborn friendliness. Fighting it would just create more paperwork. And if occasionally a human did something that reminded everyone why Deathworlds were dangerous, like the time someone tried to wrestle a Krell champion just for fun and actually won, or when a human chef somehow made a 5-alarm toxic waste dish edible and delicious. Well, the galaxy was learning to adapt. Years later, when asked about the decision to accept humans into Council space, Genix would say that it was inevitable, that humans represented the future of galactic cooperation, that their unique perspective enriched everyone. Off the record, Genix would admit that they simply got tired of humans showing up and decided it was easier to make them legal than to keep pretending the quarantine worked. Either way, the result was the same. Humanity joined the stars, not with a grand invasion or a dramatic first contact, but with purchased tickets, polite questions, and an unshakable belief that if something was out there, they had every right to go see it. The universe would never quite figure out how to handle that. But then again, neither would humans. They'd just keep showing up, being friendly, occasionally terrifying, and absolutely refusing to stay contained on their death world like sensible species would. And the galaxy, despite itself, was learning that maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all.